Abandoned in tears at a frontier stage stop until a cowboy changed her fate forever, the gunshot cracked through the air before Clara Hayes even saw the dust cloud. She pressed herself against the rough wooden wall of the stage stop, her heart hammering as 3 riders circled the building like wolves around wounded prey. The stagecoach that was supposed to carry her to Silver Creek lay on its side 200 yards down the trail, one wheel still spinning slowly in the afternoon sun. Her husband had left her here 3 hours ago with nothing but a carpet bag and a promise to return with tickets for the next coach west. That was before she found the note tucked inside her bag, written in his careful hand, explaining that he'd taken every cent they had and caught the morning stage to California. Alone. The riders dismed outside, their boots heavy on the wooden planks. Clara wiped the tears from her cheeks with trembling fingers and tried to steady her breathing. The stage stopkeeper, an elderly man named Pete, had locked himself in the back room the moment the riders appeared on the horizon. She was alone. The door crashed open. The first man through was tall and thin, with a scar running from his eye to his jaw. His 2 companions flanked him, both carrying rifles. Clara stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. "Well now," the scarred man said, his voice like gravel. "What do we have here?" Pete finally hired himself some help. "I'm waiting for the stage," Clara said, keeping her voice level despite the fear clawing at her throat. The man laughed, a sound without humor. "That stage ain't coming, sweetheart. See, we got business to conduct, and we can't have witnesses rolling through every few hours." He stepped closer, and Clara caught the smell of whiskey and sweat. "Question is, what do we do with you?" Before he could take another step, a new voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You do nothing with her." Clara turned to see a man standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright sunlight. He was broad-shouldered and wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. A revolver hung low on his hip, and his hand rested near it with the easy confidence of someone who knew how to use it. The scarred man's expression darkened. "This ain't your concern, stranger. Ride on while you still can." The newcomer stepped inside, and Clara could see his face now. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with hard eyes and a jaw set in determination. "Can't do that," he said quietly. "Lady looks like she could use some help." The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun, but the stranger was faster. His revolver cleared leather in a blur of motion, and suddenly the 3 outlaws were staring down its barrel. "Drop your weapons," the stranger said, his voice calm as still water. "All of you. Nice and slow." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the scarred man smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "You got 3 of us and 1 of you, friend. Even if you drop me, my boys will cut you down before you hit the floor." "Maybe," the stranger agreed. "But you'll still be dead? That worth it to you?" The standoff stretched into eternity. Clara held her breath, watching the stranger's eyes. They never wavered, never showed a hint of fear or doubt. Finally, the scarred man raised his hand slowly. "We'll remember you," he said. "I'm counting on it," the stranger replied. "Now get out." The 3 men backed toward the door, their faces twisted with rage. When they reached their horses, they mounted quickly and spurred away, disappearing into the desert in a cloud of dust. The stranger holstered his revolver and turned to Clara. "You all right, ma'am?" Clara nodded, finding her voice. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "Name's Cole Bennett," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "And I got a feeling those boys aren't done with this place yet. We need to get you somewhere safe." The question hung in the air between them as Pete finally emerged from the back room, his face pale and his hands shaking. Clara looked at Cole Bennett, at the strength in his eyes and the set of his shoulders, and made a decision that would change everything. She had nowhere else to go, her husband had abandoned her, the stage wasn't coming, and those men would be back. Cole Bennett was a stranger, but he'd just risked his life for her without hesitation. Sometimes, Clara thought, you had to trust your instincts even when everything else had fallen apart. "Where would we go?" she asked. Cole glanced out the window, scanning the horizon. "I got a ranch about 20 miles north of here. It ain't much, but it's defensible. You'll be safe there until we can figure out your next move." He paused, then added, "I give you my word, ma'am." "I mean you no harm." Clara picked up her carpet bag, the same one that had held her husband's betrayal just hours before. "Then I suppose we should leave before they come back with reinforcements." Cole nodded and headed for the door. "My horse can carry double for a while. Pete, you got a spare mount?" The old man shook his head. "Them boys took everything I had worth riding. All that's left is my old mule, and she ain't made for speed." "Double it is, then," Cole said. He looked at Clara. "You ever ridden before?" "Not much," Clara admitted, "but I learned fast." "Good," Because those men will be back within the hour, and they'll bring friends. He offered his hand. We need to move now. Clara took his hand, feeling the calluses and strength in his grip. As they stepped outside into the harsh sunlight, she realized she was making another leap of faith, trusting another man she barely knew. But this time felt different. This time, she was choosing her own path instead of following someone else's broken promises. Cole's horse was a sturdy bay gelding, patient and calm despite the tension in the air. He mounted first, then reached down and pulled Clara up behind him with surprising ease. She wrapped her arms around his waist, clutching her carpetbag against his back. Hold on tight, Cole said. It's going to be a hard ride. They took off at a gallop, leaving the stage stop behind in a trail of dust. Clara glanced back once and saw smoke rising from the building. Pete must have set it on fire, destroying whatever the outlaws had come for. Smart man. The desert stretched before them, endless and unforgiving. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Clara could feel sweat soaking through her dress, but she held on, trusting in the stranger who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she hadn't even known how to pray. After an hour of hard riding, Cole slowed the horse to a walk. They'd put good distance between themselves and the stage stop, but Clara knew they weren't safe yet. Men like those didn't give up easily, especially when their pride had been wounded. You doing all right back there? Cole asked over his shoulder. I'm fine, Clara said, though her arms ached from holding on and her legs felt like they might never work properly again. We'll rest soon, Cole promised. There's a water hole about 2 miles ahead. We can let the horse drink and catch our breath. Those men, Clara said. What do they want at the stage stop? Cole was quiet for a moment. Pete's been holding payroll for the Silver Creek Mining Company. $20,000 in gold, waiting for armed transport. Those boys must have gotten wind of it. 20,000, Clara breathed. That's a fortune. A fortune worth killing for, Cole agreed grimly. And now they know Pete burned it all rather than let them have it. They'll be angry. Angry men make mistakes, but they're also unpredictable. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the wind whispering through the sage. Clara found herself studying the back of Cole's head, wondering what kind of man risked everything for a stranger. In her experience, most people looked out for themselves first and everyone else never. Her husband certainly had. The waterhole appeared as a dark spot of green against the brown landscape. Cole guided the horse down a gentle slope, and Clara could hear the welcome sound of water trickling over rocks. He dismounted first, then helped her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. Easy, Cole said, steadying her. You'll get your land legs back in a minute. While the horse drank deeply from the clear pool, Cole scanned the surrounding hills with the practiced eye of someone used to watching for danger. Clara sat on a flat rock and opened her carpet bag, looking for the canteen she'd packed that morning when the world still made sense. Here, Cole said, offering his own canteen. Mine's fuller. Clara accepted it gratefully and took a long drink. The water was warm but tasted like salvation. Why did you help me? She asked suddenly. You don't know me. I could be anyone. Cole settled onto a rock across from her, his eyes still scanning the horizon. My mother used to say that we're judged not by what we have, but by what we do when someone needs us and we have the power to help. He finally looked at her directly. Those men were going to hurt you. I couldn't ride by and let that happen. Most people would have, Clara said quietly. Then most people are cowards. The simple declaration hung between them. Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness that had consumed her since finding her husband's note. Maybe not everyone was selfish. Maybe not every man was a liar. I should tell you, she said, looking down at her hands. My husband left me at that stage stop, took all our money and abandoned me. I have nothing to offer you for your help, no way to repay your kindness. Cole shrugged, didn't ask for payment. Wouldn't take it if you offered. He stood and walked to his horse, checking the saddle. Everyone deserves a second chance, Clara. Looks like you're getting yours. She smiled despite everything, the first real smile since yesterday morning. You know my name, but I don't remember telling you. Pete mentioned it before we left. Said you'd been sitting there crying for hours before those men showed up. Cole turned back to her. For what it's worth, your husband's a fool. Any man who'd leave a woman like you behind doesn't deserve to call himself a man. Before Clara could respond, Cole's expression changed. He moved to his horse in 3 quick strides and pulled a rifle from the saddle scabbard. We got company, he said quietly. 4 riders, coming fast from the southeast. Clara scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. The same men? Can't tell yet, but we're not waiting to find out. He handed her the canteen. Now. They mounted quickly, Clara's earlier exhaustion forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. Cole kicked the horse into a gallop before she'd even fully settled behind him, and they took off across the desert like a bullet from a gun. The riders behind them were gaining ground. Clara could see them clearly now, 4 dark shapes against the pale earth, pushing their horses hard. Gunshots cracked through the air, the bullets whistling past too close for comfort. Cole guided the horse into a narrow canyon, the walls rising steep and red on either side. It was a calculated risk. The canyon offered cover but also limited their options if they got trapped. Clara held on tighter, pressing her face against Cole's back, as another volley of shots echoed off the rock walls. There's a fork up ahead, Cole shouted over the thunder of hooves. We go left, there's a chance we can lose them in the Badlands. But it's rough country, and if the horse goes lame, we're finished. What's the other option? Clara yelled back. We make a stand and hope I'm a better shot than all 4 of them combined. Clara didn't hesitate. I'd rather take my chances with rough country than certain death. Cole laughed, a sound of pure exhilaration despite the danger. You got steel in you, Clara Hayes. I like that. They hit the fork at full speed, banking hard to the left. The Badlands opened before them like a maze of twisted rock formations and hidden gullies. Cole navigated through them with the confidence of someone who knew this land intimately, taking turns that seemed impossible, jumping obstacles that made Clara's stomach drop. Behind them, the pursuing riders' shouts grew fainter. One by one they fell back, unable or unwilling to follow through the treacherous terrain at such speed. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Cole slowed the horse to a trot and then a walk. Clara realized she was shaking. The reality of how close they'd come to dying crashed over her like a wave. Cole must have felt it because he reached back and patted her hand where it gripped his shirt. You did good, he said. Real good. Most city women would have panicked. Who says I didn't? Clara managed, though her voice was steady. They emerged from the Badlands as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Ahead, Clara could see a small ranch house nestled against a hill, with a barn and several corrals. Smoke rose from the chimney and a dog barked in greeting. Welcome to the Bennett Ranch, Cole said. It ain't much, but it's home. As they approached, a woman stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was older, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes that took in the scene with quick understanding. Cole Bennett, what have you gotten yourself into now? She called. Trouble, Aunt Martha, Cole replied, dismounting and helping Clara down. Same as always. Martha came down the steps and took Clara's hands in her own. You look like you've been through hell and back, child. Come inside. We'll get you cleaned up and fed, and then you can tell me all about whatever foolishness my nephew has dragged you into. Clara felt tears prickling at her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of the overwhelming kindness of strangers who asked nothing in return. As Martha led her toward the house, Clara glanced back at Cole. He was tending to his horse, running gentle hands over its legs to check for injuries, completely unaware that he'd just saved more than her life. He'd saved her faith in humanity itself. Inside the ranch house, Clara found herself in a warm kitchen that smelled of bread and coffee. Martha sat her down at a wooden table worn smooth by years of use and poured her a cup of strong coffee. Now then, the older woman said, settling into a chair across from her, start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. Clara told her everything. The journey west with her husband, the promises he'd made, the note in her bag, the outlaws at the stage stop. Martha listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When Clara finished, Martha reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Men can be foolish creatures, Martha said, but not all of them. Cole's father was the finest man I ever knew, and Cole's cut from the same cloth. You're safe here, Clara, for as long as you need. I can't impose, Clara began, but Martha waved her off. Nonsense. This house has too many empty rooms as it is. Besides, I could use the company. Gets lonely out here with just Cole, and he's gone half the time checking fence lines and chasing cattle. She stood and began pulling things from cupboards. Now you're going to eat a proper meal, take a hot bath, and get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. Clara wanted to protest, to insist that she couldn't accept such generosity, but exhaustion washed over her like a tide. She hadn't realized how tired she was until she stopped running. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Thank me by eating everything I put in front of you, Martha said briskly. You're thin as a rail, girl. We need to put some meat on those bones. Later, after a meal of stew and fresh bread that tasted like heaven, Clara sank into a copper tub filled with hot water. She scrubbed away the dust and fear of the day, letting the warmth seep into her aching muscles. Through the window, she could see Cole in the yard, talking to two ranch hands who'd arrived just after sunset. They were armed, she noticed, and kept glancing toward the road. He was still protecting her, even now. The thought made her chest tight with emotion she couldn't quite name. She'd known this man for less than a day, but he'd shown her more loyalty than her husband had in 3 years of marriage. That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Clara stared at the ceiling and thought about fate. If her husband hadn't abandoned her, she would have made it to Silver Creek, started a new life in a strange town, and never known that men like Cole Bennett existed. If those outlaws hadn't shown up at the stage stop, she might have waited there for days before accepting the truth of her situation. Every terrible thing that had happened had led her here, to this moment, to this place. Clara didn't believe in divine providence, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something larger than chance was at work. Through the thin walls, she could hear Cole and Martha talking in low voices. She caught fragments of their conversation. "Those men won't give up," Cole was saying. "Then we'll be ready for them," Martha replied firmly. "That girl has been through enough. She deserves peace." "She deserves better than what she got," Cole agreed, "but peace might be hard to come by." "They'll figure out where we went eventually." "Let them come," Martha said, her voice hard as iron. "This is our land, Cole. We fought off worse than a handful of greedy outlaws." Their voices faded, and Clara closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions to make. But for tonight, she was warm and safe and cared for. That was more than she'd had 24 hours ago. Sometimes Clara thought as sleep finally claimed her, you had to lose everything before you could find what really mattered. Dawn came with the sound of roosters and the smell of bacon frying. Clara dressed quickly in the clean clothes Martha had laid out for her, simple ranch wear that fit surprisingly well. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found the kitchen already bustling with activity. Cole sat at the table with 2 other men, both weathered and tough-looking. They stood when Clara entered, removing their hats respectfully. "Ma'am," they chorused. "Clara, these are my ranch hands," Cole said. "Jack Murphy and Sam Caldwell? They've been with the Bennett Ranch for going on 15 years. Jack was older, with silver in his beard and laugh lines around his eyes. Sam was younger, maybe Clara's age, with a serious expression and calloused hands. Both men wore guns with the same easy familiarity as Cole. "Pleased to meet you," Clara said, taking a seat. Martha set a plate in front of her piled high with eggs, bacon, and biscuits.
"We were just discussing strategy," Cole said.
"Those men from yesterday are going to come looking for you. They can't afford to leave witnesses, and they'll want revenge for the embarrassment." He took a sip of coffee. "Question is, do we wait for them here or take the fight to them?" "We wait," Martha said firmly. "This ranch has good sight lines and defensible positions. Out in the open, they have the advantage of numbers." Jack nodded agreement. "Martha's right. We know this land. They don't." That's worth more than an extra gun or 2. Sam was studying a crude map he'd drawn on a piece of paper. "They'll most likely approach from the south, following our tracks from yesterday. There's a ridge about a mile out that would give them a good vantage point. If I was planning an attack, that's where I'd position my best rifle." "So we position someone better?" Cole said. He looked at Clara. "I know this ain't what you signed up for when you agreed to come here. If you want, we can try to get you to town before they arrive. It's risky, but it might be safer than staying." Clara thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I stay. You risked your life for me. The least I can do is not run at the first sign of trouble." "Can you shoot?" Jack asked. "I can learn," Clara replied. Cole smiled. "That's the spirit. Jack, get her set up with a rifle and show her the basics. Sam, you and I are going to reinforce the barn. If they try to burn us out, that's where they'll start." He turned to Martha. "You're in charge of supplies. Make sure we have enough water, food, and ammunition to hold out for a few days if it comes to that." Everyone moved with purpose, and Clara found herself swept along in the preparations. Jack took her out behind the barn and set up targets against a hillside. He handed her a Winchester rifle, showing her how to hold it, how to sight down the barrel, how to work the lever action. "The key is breathing," Jack explained. "Take a breath. Let half of it out, then squeeze the trigger gentle-like. Don't jerk it." Clara's first shot went wide. kicking up dirt 3 feet to the left of the target. Her second was better. By her 10th shot, she was hitting the target more often than not. Jack nodded approvingly. You got a natural eye for it, he said. Keep practicing. In a fight, you might not have time to aim careful, so you need to make it instinct. They spent 2 hours on the range, and by the end, Clara's shoulder was bruised from the rifle's kick, but she could hit a tin can at 50 yards 3 times out of 5. It wasn't expert marksmanship, but it was enough to make her dangerous. Cole found her as she was heading back to the house. How'd it go? Jack says I'm a natural, Clara replied, trying not to show how proud she felt of that assessment. Good. He pointed to the south, where a dust cloud was rising against the afternoon sky. Riders. At least 6 of them. Clara's mouth went dry. 6? I thought there were only 4 yesterday. They picked up reinforcements, probably promised them a share of whatever they think they'll find here. Cole checked his revolver, then looked at Clara seriously. When the shooting starts, I want you in the house with Martha. You two will cover the front. Jack and Sam will be in the barn, and I'll be on the roof. We create a crossfire, make them think twice about rushing us. And if they don't think twice? Clara asked. Cole's expression was grim. Then we make them regret not thinking at all. They took their positions. Clara crouched by a window in the parlor, her rifle resting on the sill. Martha was at the opposite window, calm as if she did this every day. Maybe she had, Clara thought. This was frontier country where violence was never far away. The riders came into view, spreading out as they approached the ranch. Clara recognized the scarred man from yesterday, riding in the center. He raised his hand and the group stopped about 200 yards out, just beyond easy rifle range. Cole Bennett, the scarred man shouted. We don't want trouble with you. Just send out the woman and we'll be on our way. Can't do that, Cole called back from the roof. Ladies under my protection. Then you're choosing to die for a stranger, the scarred man replied. That seems awful foolish to me. I've been called worse, Cole said. Now you and your boys turn around and ride out while you still can. The scarred man laughed. You're outnumbered 3-1, Bennett. You really think you can hold out against all of us? Only one way to find out, Cole said calmly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the scarred man made a gesture, and 2 of his men dismounted, pulling rifles from their saddles. They took cover behind rocks and scrub, setting up for a siege. The first shot came from the ridge Sam had predicted, the bullet slamming into the roof near Cole's position. Cole returned fire immediately, and the ranch yard exploded into chaos. Clara forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering Jack's lessons. She spotted movement behind a water trough and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder and she heard a yelp of pain. She'd hit someone. The thought should have horrified her, but all she felt was grim satisfaction. Bullets thudded into the walls of the house, shattering glass and sending splinters flying. Martha fired methodically, never rushing, making every shot count. From the barn, Jack and Sam added their fire, creating the crossfire Cole had planned. The outlaw's initial confidence began to waver. One man fell, clutching his leg. Another retreated to better cover, dragging a wounded companion with him. The scarred man screamed orders, his voice rising with frustration. Burn them out, he yelled. Torch the barn. 2 men made a run for the barn, carrying torches they'd lit from a small fire. Cole dropped one with a single shot. The other made it halfway before Sam's rifle boomed and he went down hard, his torch rolling away harmlessly. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The scarred man realized he was losing men with nothing to show for it. He called a retreat, and the surviving outlaws pulled back, leaving 2 dead and taking 3 wounded with them. Cole emerged from his position on the roof, moving carefully in case it was a trick. When Clara joined him in the yard, her hands still trembling from adrenaline. Jack and Sam came from the barn, both grinning despite the danger they'd just faced. We did it, Sam said, sounding almost surprised. First round, Cole corrected. They'll lick their wounds and come back angrier. We need to be ready. But Clara was looking at the bodies in the yard, at the blood soaking into the dry earth, and feeling something shift inside her. She'd helped kill 2 men today. She'd shot at others without hesitation. Yesterday, she'd been an abandoned woman crying at a stage stop. Today, she was a fighter, defending a home that wasn't even hers. What had she become? As if reading her thoughts, Cole touched her shoulder gently. You did what you had to do, he said quietly. No shame in protecting yourself and the people who matter to you. Does it get easier? Clara asked. The killing? No, Cole said honestly, and pray it never does. The day taking a life becomes easy is the day you lose part of your humanity. He looked toward the southern horizon, where the outlaws had disappeared. But sometimes, Clara, the only choice is between being a victim and being a survivor. You chose to survive. That takes courage. Martha came out with water and bandages. Anyone hurt? Just scratches, Jack reported. They were shooting wild, hoping to get lucky. They'll shoot straighter next time, Martha said. We need to prepare for a longer siege. They spent the rest of the day reinforcing their positions, boarding up windows, moving supplies, and preparing for another attack. As night fell, Cole insisted they keep watch in shifts. He took the first one, perched on the roof with a rifle and a clear view of the approaches. Clara brought him coffee around midnight. She climbed up carefully, finding him alert and watchful despite the late hour. Couldn't sleep, she explained, handing him the cup. Not surprised, Cole said. First time you shoot at someone tends to keep you awake. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the desert. Finally, Clara spoke. Cole, why did you really help me? And don't tell me it's just because your mother raised you right. Cole was quiet for so long Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, 5 years ago, my wife and daughter were killed by raiders. I was away checking fence lines when it happened. Came home to find the house burned and them gone. His voice was steady, but Clara could hear the pain underneath. I spent months hunting those men. Found them all, brought them to justice. But it didn't bring my family back. Clara's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry. Point is, Cole continued, I swore after that I'd never stand by when someone needed help. Couldn't save my own family, but maybe I could save someone else's. He looked at her in the moonlight. When I saw you at that stage stop, saw those men circling, I knew I had a choice. Walk away and live with the regret, or do what my conscience demanded. You're a good man, Cole Bennett, Clara said softly. I'm trying to be, he replied. That's all any of us can do. The second attack came 3 days later at dawn when the light was tricky and shadows played tricks on tired eyes. This time there were 8 riders, and they'd learned from their mistakes. They came fast and hard, using the rising sun to blind the defenders. Clara was ready. 3 days of practice had made her more confident with the rifle, and she no longer hesitated when she saw a target. She worked the lever action smoothly, firing, ejecting the spent shell, chambering a new round, firing again. The outlaws made it into the yard this time, close enough that Clara could see their faces. The scarred man led the charge, his revolver blazing. Cole met him head-on, and for a terrifying moment, Clara thought they'd both die in that exchange. But Cole was faster. His shot took the scarred man in the shoulder, spinning him around. A second shot from Jack finished it. The scarred man fell from his horse and didn't move again. With their leader down, the remaining outlaws lost their nerve. They retreated in disorder, some abandoning their horses and fleeing on foot. By the time the sun cleared the horizon, it was over. This time, there were 4 bodies in the yard. The cost of safety was written in blood and gunpowder smoke. Clara helped Martha tend to a minor wound on Sam's arm where a bullet had grazed him. Jack had a bruised rib from where he'd taken cover too slowly. Cole was unharmed physically, but Clara could see the weariness in his eyes. Is it over? She asked him as they stood in the yard, surveying the aftermath. It's over, Cole confirmed. Word will spread about what happened here. Others will think twice before coming after you. Clara looked at the ranch house, at the barn, at the people who'd become more than strangers over the past few days. What do I do now? She asked. I still have nothing. No money, no prospects, nowhere to go. Martha approached, overhearing the conversation. You could stay, she said simply. This ranch needs a woman's touch. I'm getting too old to do all the work myself, and Cole certainly doesn't have time between managing the cattle and fighting off outlaws. Clara looked at Cole, searching his face for any sign that this wasn't what he wanted. Instead, she saw hope. We could use the help, he said. And I'd rest easier knowing you were safe here instead of trying to make it alone in Silver Creek. I don't want to be a burden, Clara said. You've proven you're anything but, Martha replied. You've got sand, girl. You stood your ground when most would have run. That's the kind of person we need on this ranch. Clara felt tears threatening again, but these were different from the tears she'd cried at the stage stop. These were tears of belonging, of finding a place where she fit. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that very much. Life at the Bennett Ranch settled into a rhythm over the following weeks. Clara learned to tend the garden, to preserve food for winter, to mend fences and doctor sick cattle. She learned the names of all the ranch hands who drifted in and out, learned which ones could be trusted and which needed watching. She also learned about Cole, how he sang to the cattle when he drove them to new pasture, how he always checked on Martha first thing every morning, how he had a soft spot for injured animals and couldn't pass a stray dog without bringing it home, how sometimes, late at night, she'd find him sitting on the porch, staring at the stars, and she knew he was thinking about his lost family. Those were the nights Clara would sit beside him in silence, offering the comfort of presence without demanding conversation. She understood grief. She grieved too, though not for a lost loved one. She grieved for the life she thought she'd have, for the naive woman who trusted her husband, for the version of herself that believed in easy happiness. But she didn't grieve for long. The ranch demanded too much attention, and Clara found purpose in the work. She was good at it, better than she'd expected. Her hands toughened, her back grew stronger, and her aim with a rifle became something Jack bragged about to anyone who'd listen. Months passed. Summer turned to fall, and fall edged toward winter. Clara marked the changes in the landscape and the cattle in herself. She was not the same woman who'd been abandoned at a frontier stage stop. That woman had died somewhere between the first gunshot and the last, and in her place had emerged someone harder, more capable, more sure of her own worth. On a cold November evening, Cole found Clara in the barn, tending to a mare who was about to foal. He leaned against the stall door, watching her work with gentle, confident hands. "You're natural at this," he said. Clara looked up and smiled. Martha's a good teacher. "So are you. Clara, I need to ask you something." Cole's voice was serious, and he seemed nervous, which was unusual for him. "You've been here almost 6 months now. Are you happy?" "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "Happier than I've been in years." "Why?" Cole took a deep breath. "Because I don't want you to stay just because you feel obligated, or because you think you have nowhere else to go. If that's the only reason, then I'll help you get set up somewhere else. Help you start fresh." Clara stood, brushing hay from her skirt. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "No," Cole said quickly. "Lord, no. That's the last thing I want." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with what to say next. "Truth is, Clara, I look forward to seeing you every morning. I find excuses to come back to the house just to hear you laugh with Martha. I lie awake at night thinking about you, and it scares me half to death." Clara's heart was hammering. "Why does it scare you?" "Because I swore I'd never care about anyone that way again. Losing my wife and daughter nearly destroyed me. I built walls, told myself it was safer to be alone." He looked at her with raw honesty. "But you walked into my life bleeding from wounds I couldn't see, and somehow you broke through every defense I had." Clara crossed the space between them, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Cole Bennett, I fell in love with you the day you pulled me onto your horse and rode straight into danger to keep me safe. Every day since, I've fallen a little more. I'm not going anywhere." The kiss, when it came, was gentle and fierce all at once. It tasted of hope and healing, of second chances and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "So," Cole said, still holding her close, "does this mean you'll marry me, or am I getting ahead of myself?" Clara laughed, the sound bright and joyful. "You saved me from outlaws, taught me to shoot, and gave me a home. Proposing is practically conservative by comparison. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes, you wonderful, brave, stubborn man." They were married in early December with Martha as witness and half the territory in attendance. Clara wore a simple white dress Martha had made, and Cole wore his best suit, looking uncomfortable but happy. The ceremony took place in the ranch house parlor, the same room where Clara had crouched with a rifle and defended her new home. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd come to this place broken and abandoned, expecting nothing but hardship. Instead, she'd found family, purpose, and love. The frontier demanded everything from you, but if you survived, if you stood your ground and fought for what mattered, it gave back in ways you never imagined. As Cole slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Clara thought about fate again. Not the cruel fate that had led her husband to betray her, but the kinder fate that had put her in Cole's path at exactly the right moment. Sometimes, she realized, the worst things that happen to you are just the universe's way of moving you towards something better. "I love you," Cole whispered as they sealed their vows with a kiss. "I love you too," Clara replied. "Thank you for changing my fate." You changed your own fate, Cole said. I just gave you a place to do it. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, white and clean over the desert landscape. Inside, the ranch house was warm with firelight and laughter. Clara looked around at the faces of the people who'd become her family, at the home that had become hers through blood and choice, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The frontier had tested her, broken her down, and rebuilt her into something stronger. She'd been abandoned in tears at a stage stop, but that was just the beginning of her story, not the end. The real story, the one that mattered, started when a cowboy with sad eyes and a good heart decided that some strangers were worth saving. And in saving her, he'd saved himself, too. That was the real magic of it all, Clara thought. Sometimes when you offer help to someone who needs it, you discover you needed them just as much. Cole had given her safety and shelter, but she'd given him something equally precious, a reason to love again, to hope again, to believe that happiness was possible after heartbreak. As the celebration continued around them, Clara and Cole slipped away to the porch. They stood together looking out at the snow-covered land, at the ranch they defended and would continue to build together. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked. Clara leaned against him, feeling his warmth and strength. "I'm thinking that I spent years believing I knew what love was, what marriage should be. I was wrong. This, right here, this is real. This is worth fighting for." Cole pulled her closer. "We'll have hard times ahead. Ranching is never easy, and the frontier doesn't forgive mistakes. But whatever comes, we face it together." Together, Clara agreed. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, crying alone at a stage stop, convinced her life was over. If she could speak to that woman now, she'd tell her that sometimes endings are just beginnings in disguise, that the worst day of your life might be the first day of something beautiful. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the land in white. In the distance, a coyote howled, and the cattle lowed in response. It was the sound of the frontier, wild and untamed and free. Clara had been afraid of this land once, afraid of its vastness and its dangers. Now she understood. The frontier didn't care about your plans or your fears. It only cared about what you did when everything fell apart. Did you give up, or did you keep fighting? Did you surrender to despair, or did you find the strength to start over? Clara had chosen to fight. She'd chosen to start over. And in doing so, she'd found not just survival, but something far more precious, a love that was earned through shared danger, a home built on mutual respect, and a future full of possibility. Inside the house, Martha was organizing the guests for dinner. She caught Clara's eye through the window and smiled, giving a small approving nod. Martha had lost her nephew's first family to violence, but she'd gained a niece through courage and circumstance. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still being written. "Ready to go back in?" Cole asked. Clara took one last look at the snow-covered desert, at the land that had witnessed her transformation from victim to survivor to something more. "Ready?" she said. They walked back inside hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, because that was what they did now. They faced things together as partners, as equals, as two people who'd found each other when they needed it most. The frontier had brought them together through tears and gunfire, through fear and courage. And though the path had been hard, though it had cost blood and pain, Clara wouldn't change a single moment of it. Every tear she'd cried at that stage stop had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this life. She'd been abandoned, yes, but she'd also been found. And that made all the difference.